Thank you for having me again. My name is Jenny Siegel. And if we could go to the next slide, please. All right, so yes, I was paralyzed when I was 9 months old from transverse myelitis. And this was a very, very rare virus back in 1983. Still rare to this day, honestly, but it took doctors over 2 weeks to diagnose me. And kind of the way the onset went was, it was the first time I was ever sick as a baby. I had the flu. And my mom took me to my pediatrician's office that morning, and he just said, she is going through a regular bout of the flu, take her home, let her get some rest, get her some fluids, and she'll be good to go in a couple of days. So that was our game plan, and that's exactly what we did. My mom brought me home that afternoon, had some lunch, and I went down for my afternoon nap. When I woke up from my afternoon nap, that's when my mom could tell something was not right. And when I woke up from my nap, I had a very, very weak cry. And she didn't know if it was just because I wasn't feeling well, but it was definitely something out of the ordinary for me. She was finishing up her Bible study. So she asked my older sister, Shannon, to come play with me, come entertain me while she finished up doing her Bible study. And she did that for about another 10 minutes or so. But she realized that cry was still very, very weak, and I wasn't stopping. And I was overall a very happy, content baby. Like, I didn't cry that much. And so the fact that I kept crying, she knew that something wasn't right. So she came in and checked on me. And at this point, I was able to stand and walk by holding on to either my parents' hands or onto the furniture. And what I love to do is look out our front door. So if I was ever not in the best of moods, my mom would just stand me in front of the screen door so I could look outside. And that always brought a smile to my face. But she realized when she went to stand me up in front of the screen door that my legs would not support the weight of my body. And at first she just thought, again, maybe it's because I'm not feeling well, but she did think that it was out of the ordinary for me. So she put a call into my pediatrician again and was waiting for a call back. And once she set me on the floor, she could tell that I couldn't lift my body up over my legs. I was literally just kind of folded in half. And that's not what I was used to doing. And what was happening was I was rapidly being paralyzed from my feet up. Still at this point, she didn't know that, but she knew something was wrong and she was not going to wait for the doctor to call back. So she called my dad at work and said, I'm on my way to pick you up. Something is significantly wrong with Jenny. We're going to the ER. And once we got to the ER, it was very busy. We went to the University Hospital and they wouldn't see me. They wouldn't see me. My mom literally had to stand up in the middle of the emergency room and say, if you don't see this baby, she is going to die. Because I was so rapidly being paralyzed that it was starting to affect my diaphragm. So I wasn't barely breathing on my own anymore. And so they finally took me back, and very long story short, I was intubated basically right away, and there were not any beds open at the University Hospital. So I was transported over to Children's Hospital, and that's where I spent the next 3 months of my life. And on the initial 2-week span, again, doctors didn't know what was wrong. They kept asking my parents, was she abused? Did she get into fertilizer? Did she access poison? No one could figure out what was wrong. And doctors were coming from all over to visit me to see if we could, figure out why this healthy, happy baby all of a sudden was completely paralyzed. And what I was finally diagnosed with was transverse myelitis. My own antibodies mistook the flu illness, or mistook my spinal cord for the flu illness, and actually gave me a C4, C5 spinal cord injury. So when I was initially paralyzed, I was completely from my neck down. I had no upper body movement. I barely could breathe. There were a lot of limitations that I had. And they also thought I had encephalitis because I would not show any sort of facial expressions. And that was because I was so mad. I didn't know what was going on. Why was I in the hospital? Why was I, having all these tubes coming out of me? And I didn't understand what was going on. But one of the first times I did smile in the hospital, my older sister, Shannon, and she's the one that's sitting behind me in that photo of me as a baby. She came to visit with my parents, and that was the first time I had smiled. And they knew that, I did not have encephalitis, and that this was just, something that we were going to have to get past. And spent the first 3 months over at Children's, and once they got me in a stable condition, they told my mom, we'll send Jenny home, but we don't have a lot of expectations. I don't know if she'll ever get out of bed. I don't know how productive she will be. And thank goodness my mom nor my dad took that information easily. They said, no, you're not going to make those decisions. For Jenny, we're going to let Jenny show you what she's capable of. And I wanted to get home. My mom wanted me to get home. So they said, well, you get her to eat, she gets to go home. And so my mom worked with me very, very thoroughly. And I started to eat on my own and we went home. And that was the best thing for me because that's where my fight began. And my mom and dad have always been the greatest support system in my corner, and being able to be in an environment where I was, what I was used to and what I was comfortable with is how I started to begin my recovery. A lot of the movement that I regained was in the first 2 years after I was sick. And I was a very active kid when I got home, once I was able to readjust to my environment. And I was honestly driving my mom crazy because I couldn't get up and run and do the things that I wanted to do. But mentally, I was ready to go. I was ready to play and explore and do the things that, every toddler wanted to do. So my mom, being the wonderful fighter that she is, she fought and she was able to get it approved for me to be the first child in the state of Colorado to get a power wheelchair when I was only 2 years old. And when you think about that, a 2-year-old driving a power wheelchair, that is kind of funny to think about. Most kiddos are still trying to just figure out how to navigate, just walking around the house. And here I am driving this big power wheelchair. But that's how I got my independence. And it was the best thing for me. And it also gave me that sense of freedom. And one of the first things that I always remember is I was very close with my cousins and my sister growing up, and we would play a game of chicken in the backyard. So we would hang up a sheet over the clothesline, and my sister and my cousins would lay down on their belly, and I would go flying through the sheet just to try to catch them before they would get up and run away from me. And those were the first tastes of me having a normal childhood. And that was something that was always important to me, was that I would have a normal childhood. And that's what my parents instilled too. It was nothing was ever going to be given to me just because I was paralyzed, and nothing was ever going to be taken away from me because of that either. And so always going to be very grateful for my parents for giving me that inspiration and that attitude. Like when my sister was doing chores, I was doing chores of my own. And that's what taught me about responsibility and that I had to work for things that I wanted. We moved to Westminster, Colorado, right before I started my first year in school as a kindergartner. And when I first started going to school over at Sunset Ridge Elementary, they didn't know what it was like to work with a kiddo with special needs. They didn't know what that meant. And so we really had to educate them about my needs and how we needed to get those met. And I don't remember a lot of this because I was so young, but the first time we went and met with the principal and the teacher over at Sunset Ridge, they told my mom, well, look, we have a sandbox set up for her. She can communicate by drawing shapes, and that's how we can, communicate with Jenny, and she can be involved that way. And my mom said, oh no, that's not how Jenny will communicate with you. Jenny can verbally tell you what is going on. Jenny can share all of her thoughts with you. Jenny can write, Jenny can color. The only thing that Jenny can't do is some of the physical aspects of like arts and crafts. So I had a paraprofessional that was with me that would help me with things like cutting and pasting or taking things out of my backpack. But those were the only things I really needed help with. I needed help from the physical standpoint. And so it was a lot of telling and educating people what I needed. And that's where I kind of got my first taste of advocacy, because I had to tell people what I needed to be able to get what I needed to get through school. And I had a very normal childhood through elementary school, which was great. I grew up with all the same neighborhood kiddos. And when they would be outside playing, I would be outside playing with them as well, maybe riding their bikes. And I loved being active. And so I would be out there too, and I'd be pulling them along with my electric wheelchair while they'd be on their skateboards. I would always find different ways to be involved because, again, this was my life and that's all I knew. And so I always wanted to figure out ways to be involved. And we always did, which was great. And back in 1991, I received the honor of being named the ambassador child for the Children's Hospital. And that gave me so many unique opportunities at a very young age. I was only 9 years old, so I was able to represent the Children's Hospital at many prestigious events. At Run for a Child's Sake, that's one of the pictures with me and my power chair, and I'm with the Denver Broncos wide receiver, Mark Jackson. And for me, being a big sports buff growing up, I was loving life. I thought that was the coolest thing. Another thing that I got to do was play on the basketball court during a Nuggets game with Michael Adams. That was another really cool event that I was able to do, where I represented the Children's Hospital. But one of the coolest things that I ever was able to do is I was selected to actually be in a Perry Mason movie. Children's Hospital nominated myself and another kiddo, Nicholas Owens, to be in a Perry Mason movie. And it was the coolest thing. I didn't speak any lines, but I was able to be in a movie with Perry Mason. Everything was filmed here in Denver. And all I can remember was I loved school growing up. I just loved school. So all I kept telling my mom was, after we were done shooting my scene, I was like, can I go back to school? And my mom's like, no, Jenny, you need to stay here and enjoy this. You know, we were meeting actors like Scott Baio and Scott Valentine, and obviously Raymond Burr and Barbara Hale. They were such wonderful individuals to interact with. But all I could think about was, hey, when do I get to go back to school? Because I love just being at school and being with my friends. So that was a great opportunity that the Children's Hospital gave me. But another wonderful thing that they gave me as well is they recommended that I get a service dog. And so I was given Augie back in 1994, and I was 12 years old when I got her. And it was such a process because we had to learn how to work together, Augie and I did. And as a 11, 10, 12-year-old kid, that was a lot of, it was a lot of training that I had to go through. But Augie was quite a blessing to me because she gave me even another level of independence. Some of the things that she would do for me is if I dropped something, she would pick it up and give it to me. If I was out of my wheelchair at home, I could tell her, go find mommy, go find daddy, go find sissy. And Augie would run through the house and make sure she got someone to me so that I could get the help that I needed. Pushed elevator buttons. One thing that my sister was always pretty proud of is she taught Augie that when it was time for breakfast or dinner, we would tell Augie, go get your bowl. And she would run and go pick up her dinner bowl, bring it into the kitchen so we could fill it up. And then she would take her food bowl back full of food to her space and eat it. So that was really cool that we were able to train her, and she gave me extra levels of independence that I didn't even think that I needed. And when I went away to college, Augie went with me as well. So she was with me from middle school through high school, through most of my years at college. Unfortunately, she did pass away right before I was ready to graduate from college. So that was a little bit of a hard time for me because Augie was basically she was a part of me, and she was one of my best buddies for 11 years. So when I did lose Augie, that was a hard point for me. So as I was saying, I grew up in the same neighborhood and I went to the same school district throughout my whole time, K through 12. I was in Adams County School District 50, and it taught me a lot about what it was like to stand up for myself and advocate for myself. And my mom was always a big part of that for me. When I was transitioning to go to middle school, they wanted me to go to it wasn't my home school. It was the accessible school in the school district. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't just move on to Shaw Heights Middle School with all my friends and with my sister. And it was because Shaw Heights was not the quote unquote accessible school. And unfortunately, there was an accident with a kiddo who had some cognitive delays, and he was with their paraprofessional, and this person parked their wheelchair right by a set of stairs. And unfortunately, that student fell down the set of stairs. And so they were worried that that same type of situation would happen with me. And so they did not want me to go to that school. And I told my mom I didn't think that was fair. Like, I wanted to go to walk to school with my friends, and I wanted to be, just with everybody that I've been with for the last 5 years. And she said, okay, well, we got to go talk to the school board, and we got to fight for this for you, because if that's how you feel, then we need to fight for it. And we fought with the school board, and I was lucky enough that we were able to win, and I was able to attend Shaw Heights Middle School with all of my friends, with my sister, which was a great thing for me. And then I went off to Westminster High School, and you learn a lot when you're in high school. I learned a lot, that's for sure. And throughout my whole life, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. That's what I thought I was going to have a career as, because I had so many people in the medical world help me get from point A to point B. And I wanted to be able to do that for the next person. And so that's what I always thought I was going to do. But in the back of my mind, I knew that I always had a very true love for sports as well. I love sports even more than just the average sports fan. I can remember every Sunday I was sitting on the couch with my dad watching Broncos games. And as I got a little bit older, and when I say a little bit older, I mean 6, 7, my dad and I would watch the games together, but we would have more of the analytical discussions, more about the coaches and the players and, why they're doing the things that they're doing. And before I knew it, I kind of felt like we were having these adult discussions and I was only this little kiddo, but that's how much I love sports. So that was always in the back of my mind as well, is, maybe I could do something in the sports field, but I was always very focused on the medical field just because of everything that was done for me. But when I entered high school, the only thing that I wanted was a Letterman's jacket. I didn't care how I got it. I just wanted that Letterman's jacket. And I grew up playing sports, but I couldn't play sports at the high competitive level that I would like to because of my disabilities. So when I entered high school, I was like, well, how can I get this letter jacket if I can't play sports? Because I wanted an academic or an athletic letter. And one day I saw a posting for a meeting for the girls basketball team. And I thought to myself, hey, what if I was a manager for the girls basketball team? That would be a way for me to be involved with sports, even though I can't play them, and I could possibly get that letter that I've always dreamed of. And so I went to the meeting and I talked to the coaches afterwards, and that was the best decision I ever made, because that's why I have a picture of myself and the varsity basketball team up there, because that group of girls and those two coaches literally changed my life. They did not just treat me as, Jenny the manager, Jenny who, is going to be at practices with us. I was an integral part of that team. They would not do anything without me. And those girls made me feel like I was as every bit a part of that team as they were. I can remember one time we were getting bused for all of our away games. And they told my coach, Coach Hyatt, that, okay, sorry, we're not going to have an accessible bus for one of your games. And he said, well, then we don't go. We don't travel, or we don't go if we don't go with Jenny. So you get us an accessible bus or we will forfeit the game. And for someone to stand up for me and show how important that is, it meant the world to me. And that I could be accepted by these, upperclassmen and these star athletes. And the coaches wanted me to be a big part of that team. And that just changed my outlook on a lot of things, because I was like, wow, there is a way for sports to be in my life without me having to play them. And so it made me start thinking about, well, maybe I could have a career in sports. And while I was in high school, I wrote for our newspaper. I was a member of our yearbook staff. So I started thinking, you know what? I could get into sports broadcasting. That could be a career that I would love. And so I decided to go to the University of Northern Colorado. And at that time, I was working with DVR, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. They did help me financially. I went to school on a lot of scholarships, but they did help with my books and fees for all the semesters that I was there and that I kept above a C average. So I was very grateful to DVR for helping me with that aspect, because that was something that was very important to me, is that I wanted to go away to college. And that was a big time in mine and my family's life, because that was the first time I would be away from home. And my mom did all of my care when I was growing up. But once we got to the point of me we knew that I wanted to go off to college, she said, all right, Jenny, well, we need to get caregivers in here, because you need to know what that's like to have other people take care of you other than just myself. So I'm really glad that we started that transition early, because there was a lot of learning curves with that. When I went away to school, luckily I only went about an hour away from where my parents lived. So it was that good, happy medium of me being on my own, but also I could still have the access to the support of my family when I needed it. And there were quite a few times where, my mom, who I am very blessed that she, took so much of her time and dedicated it to me, but she would literally come up to Greeley and help me get ready in the morning, because there were plenty of times where my caregivers just didn't show up. And I was like, well, how am I going to get up? How am I going to get to class? And that was something that was very frustrating for me, because I did not want to not be able to go to school or not be able to make it to my classes because of somebody else. And I couldn't comprehend, it wasn't acceptable to me. So thank goodness that my mom is the wonderful human being that she is. And she would drive an hour to help me get up and get ready for the day when those caregivers would not show up, because unfortunately, that's something that I dealt with quite often. And then I also made some really, really good friends when I was up at UNC. We lived in the same dorm, and one of my best friends still to this day is Kathy. And we got to be very, very close. And, most college kids do not like to go to bed at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. That's usually when the nights are just getting started. We're figuring out our plans for the night, where we're going, what we're going to be doing. But I would often have to tell them, well, hey guys, I'm sorry, I won't be able to, go have dinner with you or go have drinks later on, because I had to get to bed, because that's when my caregivers came. But my friends were wonderful, and they said, well, why don't you just show us, how to help you, and then we can help you get to bed, and we can help you get up in the morning if we need to do that, so that you can be a part of everything that we're doing. So during our first big break from school, went for our holiday break around Christmas, they came and stayed a couple of nights at my parents' house, and my mom showed them how to do all of my care. So that was something I was very blessed with, that they were willing and wanting to do that for me. So that they were a huge help throughout the years that I was over at UNC in Greeley, because not only did I have my mom that I could call, but I could also call those girls too. And they literally lived either down the hall, or once we lived off campus and had our own apartments, they lived down the street. And they were willing to come and help me out. So I was very, very grateful and blessed that I met some wonderful people like that. And a lot of those girls are still in my life, and we're still incredibly close, which was great. And while I was up at college, I wanted to carry on managing sports, because what it did for me in high school, I managed basketball and I managed soccer in high school as well. But I wanted to keep doing that at the collegiate level. So I reached out to the head coach of the women's basketball team at UNC and asked if they wanted a manager. And he said, heck yeah, come join us. So that was a very positive experience that I had again. And I was able to be the manager of the UNC women's basketball team. So that was very, very cool. I graduated in 2004 with honors from the University of Northern Colorado with a bachelor's degree in journalism and mass communications and a minor in speech communication. And when I was in school, I did an internship with 9 News. And that was a very important thing for me to accomplish, because one, I needed to do the internship for school credit, but also it gave me a chance to get a taste of what it was like to actually work in the media as a woman in a wheelchair. And that was the coolest experience for me. Again, they welcomed me with open arms. I worked with sportscasters like Rod Mackey and Ryan Shiverini, and I still keep in very close contact with Rod Mackey to this day. I see him often at different sporting events, whether it's Broncos or Nuggets or Avalanche. I see Rod a lot, and he was a big part of me getting my foot in the media world. And it was a great, great experience for me. And I remember one of the first days I was working over there, they said, hey, Jenny, what sports do you dislike the most? And I was like, yeah, I'm not much into golf and I'm not much into car racing. And they're like, okay, well, guess what you're going to be covering when you're working for us? We're going to teach you all about how to write about golf and how to broadcast about car racing, because I could talk football, basketball, baseball in my sleep. And they said, well, we're going to teach you a lot about golf and car racing as well. So it was a very fun experience for me, because I was able to still do a lot of the mainstream sports that I loved. I went to Broncos training camp with them. I put together a couple of mock newscasts, but also I had to learn a lot about golf and car racing. So I still am grateful to Rod Mackey for that to this day. Right before I graduated from the University of Northern Colorado, I was very blessed and grateful to win the title of Miss Wheelchair Colorado. And that was a very significant time in my life because I wanted to use my platform to show young kiddos that there is still so much you could do with your life. Whatever form of disability you may have, there is still so much you could do with your life. And when I won this title, it was still very early in my life. Like I wasn't working in the professional world yet, but I had, moved out. I went to college. I was able to do so many things with my life. And so I wanted to use my platform to share with not only, younger people and kiddos, but so many others that no matter what obstacles are in your way, if you overcome those obstacles, it just makes you a stronger person. And that's what I learned throughout my whole life is, every time I would accomplish something that I didn't know if I would be able to do, I felt better about myself and I felt like a stronger person. Like when I was able to go to my home middle school, when I graduated from high school, when I was able to manage the women's basketball team, when I was able to accomplish all of these things, it taught me that, every time you overcome those obstacles, it just makes you a stronger, more determined person. And I was able to carry that attitude with me. And that's something that I wanted to convey during my year as Miss Wheelchair Colorado. I was able to go to the Miss Wheelchair America pageant in Virginia, which was really cool. I placed third out of all of the candidates that was out there competing, and to place third was a big honor for me. So I represented Colorado as Miss Wheelchair Colorado from 2004 to 2005, and that was a really big time in my life and something that I will never, ever forget. During that time, with me being Miss Wheelchair Colorado, I still wanted to stay active in the sports world though, because I won the title right before I graduated. But I also didn't want to put my career on hold because I knew it was going to take a lot of work for me to possibly get to where I wanted to be, and that was to be a sports broadcaster. So while I was Miss Wheelchair Colorado, I picked up another internship because I wanted to stay active in the media world. So I got an internship with WB2 News, and that was a really good experience for me because I was able to do even more than what I did at 9 News, and I was able to build on my resume and really learn and dive in to more of the duties. And I was very grateful to Chris Reba, Blake Olson, some of the broadcasters over there, because they really gave me a lot of free reign and they let me run with things, and I learned a lot. So I'm really glad that I kept doing these internships while I was Miss Wheelchair Colorado. And then the other next big life event that I wanted to take on was I wanted to learn how to drive. Learning how to drive was something that was going to be very, very important to me. Just because of working in the sports media world, my days, none of them look the same. Like one day I will be at the studio producing a show. Another day I'll be at Broncos training camp. Another day I'll be at Ball Arena getting interviews with players from the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche. So I needed to have my own form of transportation. So that was my next big journey in life. And when I was learning how to drive back in 2005, Craig Hospital did not have the adaptive technology that I needed, because I needed pretty high-tech equipment because of the level of my paralysis. And so at that point, there were only 3 schools in the whole United States that had access to that type of equipment. One was in Atlanta, Georgia at the Shepherd Center. Another one was at a school in Florida. And then the other place was at a school in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So with a lot of support from DVR, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, I started reaching out to these schools to see, who had the time and the availability to teach me. So the first school to respond was Brandt's Driving School in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And so that's where I learned how to drive. So DVR was very instrumental in that whole process for me because I had to make 2 trips out to Pennsylvania. My first trip out was just to get an evaluation to see, if driving really was a reality for me and what type of equipment I would use. So I was out there for 3 or 4 days doing very thorough evaluations. And once we figured out that, yeah, this is definitely a possibility, and yes, I will be able to drive and do so safely, we decided to take the next step. And I went back out to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and I spent 2 weeks out there, and I went through a very rigorous driving program with them. And that's where I learned how to drive. I actually got my driver's license in Pennsylvania, and it was a pretty funny story that I had to surrender my Colorado residency to be able to get the Pennsylvania driver's license, because they were not going to issue me the Pennsylvania license while I was still a Colorado resident. So I literally had to surrender my residency and become a resident of Pennsylvania. And I still have the driver's license that I got. And it's pretty funny because it has the address of the hotels that I was staying at. So that was my address in Pennsylvania, because that's what I had to do to get my license. So when I got back to Colorado after going through the driving school, DDR was still very supportive with me, and I was able to get my very first minivan. They helped with all of the cost of the equipment and the installation of the equipment. And the equipment that I drive on is very, very high tech. It's the gas and brake system that I use. It's like a T-bar handle, and it's exactly what's in an F-14 jet. So it's very high-tech equipment. And then I use a little steering wheel that helps me control the big wheel when I'm driving. But the level of independence that I was able to get from driving I can't even put into words what that has done for me. And ironically, when I was out in Pennsylvania going through all this driver's training, I got a call from one of the coordinating producers at Altitude Sports. And Altitude had just launched in 2004, the same year I had graduated from college. And I actually made some connections when I was fundraising for my Miss Wheelchair Colorado campaign. And I met a lady, her name was Deb Dowling, and she got me in touch with the CEO of Altitude, and his name is Matt Hutchings. And I met with him one time just to kind of give him a background on myself and let him know how interested I was in working in the sports world. And with them just launching, he didn't really have any openings at that time. But oh, poor Matt Hutchings. I contacted that man weekly for probably 2 years just to follow up and say, hey, just checking in. Do you guys have any openings? I would really like to, be a part of Altitude. And in the meantime, I was applying to multiple jobs throughout the United States as well, because to work in the sports broadcasting field, you have to start in smaller markets. And that's exactly what I thought I was going to have to do. I thought I was going to have to move to Nebraska or Oklahoma to be able to get my first taste of the sports broadcasting world as a professional. But when I was in Pennsylvania, I did get a call from Hank Siegel. He was one of their coordinating producers. And he said, yeah, Matt Hutchings gave me your contact info. And unfortunately, we still don't have a job for you, but we do have an internship. Would you be willing to take that internship? And you would basically be my right-hand man. You would cut all my highlights for me. You would write my scripts. You would do all of those things. Do you want it? And initially I was like, shoot, I don't want it. I don't want to have a third internship. Like, I want to start my professional career. I want to move out of mom and dad's house. I want to start making money. Like, I do not want a third internship. But thank goodness I did not let my stubbornness get in the way. And I accepted that internship. And that was honestly the best thing that I could have ever done. I was offered that internship in 2005. And it turned into a full-time job. And now I work as a sports producer out here in Denver, Colorado. And I couldn't ask for a better setup or a better job. I am incredibly blessed to do everything that I am doing. I have been able to launch some pretty significant shows. One of the pictures on the bottom left with us all in Christmas gear. That was one of the shows that I launched. It was called the Fantasy Football Hour. And that was a nationally syndicated show. And for that to go national from a small regional sports network, that was a huge, huge accomplishment for me. And then the one with the screen that says You Bet Tonight, that is one of the current shows that I'm producing. I launched that one from the ground up as well. And we just started that show, not this past October, but the October before. And sports betting was a whole new world for me because I didn't do a lot of sports betting. So when they told me that I was going to be the lead producer on that show, I was like, oh crap, that's a lot of pressure. Like, I don't even know what it's like to do sports betting. But I was like, all right, let's do it. And I grabbed the project by the horn, did a ton of research, and got very comfortable with sports betting. And now we're in our second season of it, and BetMGM is our sponsor. And they actually liked the show so much that they signed on with 2 additional shows. So not only do we have UBET tonight, but we also have UBET college football and UBET pro football. So they actually expanded their series with us, which was really, really cool. Another thing that I am incredibly proud of is I got to be the head producer for Vic Lombardi. And for anybody here in Colorado, Vic Lombardi is like sports royalty out here. So the fact that I was able to be his producer and they trusted me to do that, that was such a cool experience for me. And I love the Denver Broncos. That's my favorite sport out there, football is. And of course, I love the Broncos. And that was the main content that I got to produce for Vic. So that was a wonderful experience for me. Not only did I start working for Altitude Sports in 2005, but all throughout high school, I worked at the Colorado Rockies as a host usher. So I wanted to have some sort of a job while I was in high school so that I can, get all the needs of what a teenager wants, get fancy clothes and get my nails done and all of these things. But my parents were like, well, you're gonna have to get a job if you're gonna pay for it. So I got a job as a host usher at Coors Field. But once I graduated from college, I saw they had a job opening for a replay operator. And I was like, that's something that I could do. So I was given the opportunity to take on that job for the Rockies. And I'm still doing that from this day on as well. So I've been doing the replay operation for the Rockies since 2005, as long as working with Altitude Sports. So my dreams kind of aligned all at the same time, which was really, really cool for me. I kept just the way my life has always been, is I always have goals that I want to achieve. And so I wanted to keep achieving more, even though I had the dream job that I wanted. I had the dream jobs that I wanted, actually, but I wanted to have a home that was set up just for me so that I could live even more independent. I did move into an apartment with some friends in 2007, and that was all right. And then I got a house in 2009, which was kind of set up for me, but not as great as it could have been. So in 2017, I made the commitment and had an accessible home built for me. So that home is set up completely for myself. So I have a ramp inside the garage. That's where I park my van, come into the house through the garage. I have a roll-in shower in the master bathroom, which is where I can work with my caregivers and get the care that I need. To that aspect, in the bathroom, there are no cabinets underneath the sink. So I could go underneath the sink, brush my teeth, do all the things that I need to do. So having an accessible home built for me was a huge accomplishment. And then another wonderful thing that came my way is I had the opportunity to begin working for the Denver Broncos. As a producer at Altitude, I developed a lot of relationships with the Broncos PR department just by going to training camps and different events. And I got to know the PR staff because they helped facilitate interviews for us. And I saw that they had a job posting for being a member of their PR game day staff. And so I talked to a couple of the PR people there and told them I was interested. And they said, well, the job's yours. You want it, it's yours. So I've been able to work with the Broncos as a member of their PR game day staff since 2021. So that was a huge, it was one of the coolest things in my life, honestly, because the Broncos have always been my team. And to say that I get to work for the Denver Broncos is really cool. Another big thing that's going on for me right now, last year I got to cover some of the Stanley Cup final run for the Colorado Avalanche. Well, currently, my boss has told me, hey, Jenny, we need our best producer on this. So you're going to produce all of the Colorado Avalanche pre and post game shows during the playoff run. So that's what I'm doing now. So I've been able to be very blessed and see everything come full circle for me. And it wouldn't have happened without the support of my family, 100%. They have been, in my corner from day one. But also the access to the services that I needed. DVR was very instrumental in my college journey and to help me drive and get my first vehicle. DVR was with me the entire way. And then again, I'm on the CDOS program, Colorado, the Consumer Direct Attendant Support Services, and that allows me to manage my own caregiving staff. So I can hire my aides and bring in people that I think that will work best for me and best with my schedule. So it's been a journey. It's been a lot of ups and downs for sure, but I wouldn't change anything about it because it has made me the person that I am, and all the opportunities that have come my way, I am extremely grateful for. And I can't wait to really see what comes next for me. So that's my presentation for you guys, but I would like to open it up if there are any questions that people would like to ask me or anything. I would love to interact with you. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm going to start with the chat, if that's okay, because while you were presenting, a few comments did come in. So if others want to throw things in chat, that would be lovely. And if you want to raise your hand and go off of mute, that's okay too. So yeah, in the very beginning, comment from Wanda saying, Jenny, you are an inspiration. Another comment from Nancy says, thanks for sharing the amazing partnership that you and Augie created together. Both Marcella and Wanda did the clapping emoji during your presentation. They liked what you were sharing and had to put that in chat, so that's great. Leah mentions that that's so awesome that she's also a major Broncos fan and that you even got to meet Parker, the snow dog, and congrats on reaching all your goals. You have an amazing drive and a wonderful support system. Marcella has a few comments here in chat. She says, Jenny, thank you for your presentation. What a great role model you are for so many. So she has 3 questions, so I'll just read one at a time. So her first question is, reflecting on your life, what changes in policy have you witnessed that are present now that didn't exist in your earlier years that have been critical in supporting you?
One of the biggest things for me, and it's actually became a very big passion of mine, and that's why I had the pleasure of meeting Catherine, as I've done so much advocating for complex rehab technology. And complex rehab technology, for those of you that don't know what it is, it's a specialized equipment for people with disabilities. And so for me, that specifically is including the seating system that I sit in my manual or my power wheelchair, excuse me, the seat elevator that is on my power chair. That is how I'm able to, be eye level with you guys during this presentation. But I can do so much with that seat elevator as far as reaching things on the shelves at work, pushing elevator buttons, reaching light switches, things that I wouldn't be able to do without the seat elevator. I have a tilt system on my chair, and that allows me to relieve pressure throughout the day because I'm up in my chair 16 to 18 hours a day sometimes with the schedule that I have. So being able to advocate for that complex rehab technology has been one of the biggest things that I have noticed that we're making some progress with, because what we're trying to do is get a separate benefit category so that we can continue to have access to complex rehab technology. Because without complex rehab technology in my everyday life, I wouldn't be able to do any of the things that I do. I wouldn't be able to work. I wouldn't be able to be a productive member of society, because if I did not have access to the correct equipment, I probably couldn't even leave my house. So being able to advocate for that equipment has been a huge part of me getting access to things that I need and getting that change over the years. I really started doing that since 2009. And one of our biggest accomplishments along the way is now the seat elevator is being recognized as a medical necessity, as opposed to just it being, because a lot of insurance companies are seeing it as a luxury. Well, it's not a luxury. For me, it's a medical necessity that I use every single day. So just the progress we've made with that is one key example that I could share.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenny. And you kind of even touched on this a little bit. Her second question is, what policies need to be in place that are not yet in existence?
I mean, there still needs to be so much more easy access to complex rehab technology, because again, if that goes away, it would significantly change not only my life, but so many others as well. And so even though we're making progress, I still feel like there's so much more progress that needs to be made and that could be made.
Correct. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. And then her third question is just, are you active in any capacity with Special Olympics or Paralympics?
I was actually, I did quite a bit with Special Olympics, especially when I was younger. I was part of their Challenger League baseball team. I played baseball with them when I was a young kiddo. And when I was Miss Wheelchair Colorado, I was present at a lot of their events, either just as a person there to cheer on the athletes, or I played bigger significant roles in some of those events, either as an MC or announcing some of the races. So I'm not as active with them now as I wish I could be, but with my work schedule, there's not a lot of free time, unfortunately, but it is, I love Special Olympics and I support everything that they're about.
Thanks, Jenny. And then some really great comments that come in after Marcella's question. So Nancy says, wow, thank you so much, Jenny, for sharing your journey with us all. Catherine says, great presentation, Jenny. Katie says, thank you, Jenny. You are such an inspiration. Thanks for sharing your story and your success. Wanda says, you are amazing. Kojo says, wow, thank you so much for sharing. What an inspirational story. You are amazing. Lacey says, thank you, Jenny, for sharing your amazing journey. You are amazing. Catherine shares, appreciate the connection of technology, transportation, and support from DVR and CDOS. Your drive and high goals is just the leadership that we need. Jenny says, thank you for sharing your story. Your perseverance and vision, as well as your mom's wisdom, really shine through, and did an emoji with all the little heart kisses over the face. Rim says, here's a question. So Rim says, what did you need people in education to do in order to be successful?
For me, is I just wanted my teachers to approach me as an individual and really just ask me what I needed instead of them just thinking what I needed. And if you're not around the situation, and that's not a fault to those teachers, because if you're not around it, you don't know. And so my biggest advice would be just to ask the individual, like, what can I do to make this ride successful for you? Whatever that looks like, you tell me what you need, and then I'm here to support in any way I can. And that's kind of how it developed as I went on in my school years. Is teachers got to be comfortable with me, where they would approach me and be like, Jenny, tell me what you need. Tell me how I can help. And for me, that was the best way to do that, because from a mental capacity, I could do everything that all of my classmates could do. There were just some unique circumstances where I might need some help along the way, whether, again, if it was arts and crafts or anything along those lines. And even through high school, I still had a paraprofessional with me just to help me get, books out of my backpack and switch out things throughout the day, So it was all about just seeing me as an individual, because everybody has their own specific needs.
Wonderful. Next question. This is from Patty. She says, Jenny, thank you for sharing your story. Your enthusiasm and drive is so inspiring. What advice would you give to a young adult with special challenges?
I would just say, do not let anything get in your way. Do not think that anything is unreachable. I mean, for me to be a woman working in media is one accomplishment, but to be a woman in a wheelchair working in media is something that I'm extremely proud of, and I will never take that for granted. So I would just say, always go after what you want, no matter what that goal looks like. And don't think that there might be something that isn't achievable. There might be some speed bumps along the way for sure, but don't let those hinder you going for that ultimate goal. Because once you reach your goal, you're going to feel so proud of yourself, and you're going to be driven to reach the next one. So again, it's not like it won't be without hardships. I definitely have met my fair share of hardships, but if I would have let those get in my way, I wouldn't be able to live the life that I'm living now. So always go after what you want to.
Thank you, Jenny. Again, so inspirational. I appreciate all of your messaging. Nancy here makes a comment. She says, Jenny, I appreciate your message, at least as I understand it, that people must be prepared to advocate strongly for their needs and rights. And at the same time, they must be prepared to work hard for what they want.
Very true.
And then Leah has a question. She says, did you have to ask for accommodation in your jobs? And how did that process go for you?
Overall, I haven't had to have a lot of modifications for me to do the jobs that I do, because I can use a regular computer. The editing system that I use at the Rockies is the same editing system that everybody else uses. So luckily, I haven't had to encounter a lot of that. But one thing that I did have to encounter is when I'm producing shows, I'm communicating with like a crew of 12 people. So we're all on headsets the whole time that we're doing a production. And for me, every time I needed to leave the control room to go look at a project or contact somebody, I had to ask somebody to take my headset off, put it back on for me. And what I learned from my coworkers is they didn't mind that. But for me, I was like, I don't want to have to ask for something every time I need to go do something I need to do. So I did talk to our engineers over at Altitude, and they made me like my own specific little producer station, which is really cool. So instead of wearing a headset, I can just speak into a microphone. And so I can come and go from the control room, do the things that I need to do on my own schedule. And also the way the control room is set up, the buttons to be able to communicate with everybody on my crew was too far out of my reach. So that's again why they made this little producer station for me. So I could just pull the box right in front of me and I have access to everything that I need.
Excellent. And then a comment here from Wanda just saying this is a great example of person-centered services. And I second that. As a person-centered thinking trainer, I love everything, how it's very individualized in person, directed to just the person and their needs. Wanda further says, how can we contact you for future speaking engagements?
Yeah, I thought about that as I was kind of going over my presentation at 2 a.m. this morning, is that I did not include that on my PowerPoint, and I sincerely apologize for that. You guys can contact me if you go to my website, which is jennyseigal.com, exactly how my name is spelled. There's a contact page through there. Also, you can email me at Jenny, JENNY _ Siegle, SIEGLE @yahoo.com. So that's another direct way of being able to contact me without going through the website. But the website does give you guys a little bit more details about my journey and some of the examples of some of the stuff that I've done.
Thank you, Jenny. And for those of you following along in chat, Vanessa did pop into chat both of those. So the web address as well as the email address for you. So you can grab that out of chat if you didn't catch it while we were saying it. Next up, we have from Jenny Jordan saying, in your story, you highlighted how important it was to have reliable caregivers and attendants. What message or insights might you share with people who are considering taking on those sorts of positions?
For someone that's considering being a caregiver, like for me, the main thing that I have learned, especially through my journey with CDOS, is, it's nice to have somebody that has a medical background. That's always good to have that foundation. But what I have learned that's even more important is that that person is just a genuinely good human being. And they understand that they really need to be there for that individual. Things are going to come up where people are going to be sick or they're going to have heart issues and they're going to have to miss work. But you need to think about it as, if you don't show up for me or someone in a similar situation, my day can't start. I can't do the things that I need to do. So basically what I have learned is if I just have a genuinely good human being that just cares, that's been the biggest thing for me. It's being able to find just a good person and someone that takes it seriously, that knows that this is a job, that they have to be responsible. And then, when they say they're going to be there, they need to be there. So I would say just be a good human being, show that you're responsible and show your eagerness to learn. Because with my care, there are things that you need to know, but like my care all in all is pretty basic. But as long as you have an open mind, that's a lot of it as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then so far, the last comment that we have gotten in the chat is just from Wanda saying, thank you, Jenny. So we do have about 4 minutes left of the session. If there's any other questions or if anybody did want to unmute and ask a question that way, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, Jenny, we want to absolutely express our gratitude and thanks for you attending our third Employment First Summit and presenting your story and your journey, and incredibly inspirational, motivational, and really, really love where you're at. And I, for one, can't wait to see where you go, where your future is. Don't forget about us.